The crystal chandelier in the Thorne family dining room chimed softly, but the sound felt as cold as the December air pressing against the windows of the Park Avenue penthouse. Eleanor Vance watched as the uniformed staff moved with silent efficiency, replacing silver that was barely used, pouring wine into glasses that were already half full. The room was heavily decorated for Christmas, with lush garlands draped over the fireplace and a tree that grazed the ceiling. Yet it all felt sterile, like a museum exhibit rather than a home. Eleanor noted, as she always did, how Marcus fussed over the seating charts for these small dinners. It was a meticulous control he applied to everything and everyone in his life. Tonight, it was just the three of them. Eleanor, in an understated silk blouse, sat opposite her mother-in-law, Beatrice Thorne. At the head of the table sat her husband, Marcus Thorne too. Beatrice, sharp and cold in her customary pearls, dominated the conversation as always. "The catering for the gala is finalized," Beatrice announced, sipping her wine. "We managed to secure the St. Regis ballroom. It is so important to maintain standards, especially this year." Her eyes drifted to Eleanor, a flicker of disdain that was gone as quickly as it came. "Which reminds me," she said, her voice like chilled glass, "I do hope you'll wear something appropriate for the gala, Eleanor. We must keep up appearances after all." The implication hung in the air, thick and unpleasant. Appropriate meant not like you. Before Eleanor could form a polite, neutral response, Marcus laughed. It was a loud, dismissive sound that he used to end conversations. He reached over and patted Eleanor's hand, a gesture not of affection, but of ownership. "Mother, please," he said, smiling. "Eleanor isn't used to this sort of pressure. It's a lot for her to handle, isn't it, darling?" He was speaking about her, not to her. He treated her like a beautiful, simple accessory he had to manage. It was the same condescending tone he always used, the one that reminded her that in his eyes, and in his mother's, she was the outsider, the black woman who had somehow slipped into their old money world and would never truly belong. Later, as dessert was served, Eleanor watched Marcus check his phone under the table. A small, private smile touched his lips. When he glanced up and saw her looking, the smile vanished, replaced by a hard, impatient mask. He quickly locked the screen. "Just business, Eleanor," he said, his voice sharp. "Numbers you wouldn't understand." The staff began to clear the plates. As the maid reached for Beatrice's glass, the older woman waved her away and rose from her chair. She moved toward Eleanor, who was alone for a moment as Marcus checked his phone again. Beatrice leaned in, her perfume suffocating. "You must understand, my dear," Beatrice whispered, her voice deceptively sweet, a complete contrast to her cold eyes. "Blood always tells. Marcus needs a partner who adds value, not one who merely exists." The insult was direct, brutal, and delivered with the precision of a surgeon. Eleanor simply held her gaze, offering no reaction, which only seemed to infuriate the older woman more. Later that night, as Eleanor passes the study, she overhears Beatrice's sharp tone. "She is a liability, Marcus. You need to fix this mistake. The gala is the perfect deadline." It feels like Eleanor is being backed into a corner, doesn't it? She's being underestimated by everyone in that room. If you're still watching and you feel the weight of that injustice, let us know you're here by simply commenting with the number 8 below. It lets us know you value these details. And if you haven't subscribed, I truly recommend you do. Here at Black Brilliance, we are dedicated to sharing these powerful stories of overlooked strength and resilience. Subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because your support is what helps us continue to create this content and inspire you. Now, let's continue. We're about to see what happens when they push Eleanor too far. The word mistake echoed in Eleanor's mind louder than the 10 a.m. traffic on Park Avenue. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that she was the mistake Beatrice wanted fixed. She replayed the scene from last night, Marcus's secret text message, his cold dismissal, and Beatrice's final, sharp command. The gala is the perfect deadline. She realized then that she could never fight them on their terms, never win a battle of social status or blood. She would need a different weapon. She found Beatrice in the morning room, bathed in the pale winter light. The older woman was sipping tea from a porcelain cup, her eyes scanning the Wall Street Journal. Eleanor, dressed for the day, paused at the entrance. "Good morning, Beatrice." Beatrice did not look up. She merely sighed. "Anna, this tea is tepid. Please have it fixed." The maid, standing nearby, flinched and hurried away. The overt snub, the casual cruelty of being ignored as if she were air, solidified Eleanor's resolve. There would be no appeal, no mercy. Marcus was at the club, a euphemism for meetings Eleanor was never privy to. She walked to his home office and tried the handle. Locked as always. She returned to her own small study, a room he rarely entered, and sat at her laptop. She didn't need his office, not yet. She just needed a starting point. Her mind went to a society photo she'd seen 2 weeks ago from the Philharmonic benefit. A picture of Marcus laughing, talking intimately with Catherine Alastair, the daughter of a rival old money family. At the time, she dismissed it as Marcus simply networking. Now it felt like a clue. Another memory surfaced. Marcus complaining about a missing cufflink last week, impatiently telling her to check his tuxedo pocket. She had found it, but beneath it, she'd also found a small, folded receipt from a private jeweler. A custom emerald pendant. It wasn't an anniversary, nor her birthday. It was not for her. She turned back to the laptop and logged into the shared household server, navigating to the mundane folder labeled Household Management. Insurance policies, staff schedules, receipts for wine. She scrolled past it all, looking for something out of place. And she found it, a hidden password-protected folder labeled simply, Empty Private Trust. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She tried the obvious passwords, his birthday, Thorne, Gala, mistake. All were denied. She stared at the screen, thinking of the photograph, of the emerald pendant. On a cold, bitter whim, she typed Catherine. The folder clicked open. It was full of PDFs she didn't recognize, property deeds, bank transfers, and shell company names. Her name was on none of them, but her signature, a near-perfect, damning forgery, was on all of them. It wasn't just a forgery, it was an erasure. He was wiping her from his life, one pixelated signature at a time. Eleanor stared at the screen, the Catherine password glowing in her memory. He wasn't just careless, he was arrogant. He believed so fully in her simplicity, in her being inappropriate and requiring management, that he'd hidden his crimes behind the name of his mistress. He was counting on her being too intimidated, too simple, too black to ever look. She knew she needed more than digital files. She needed an ally who spoke Marcus's language, money. The Bleecker Street Cafe was old school, smelling of dark roast coffee and toasted bagels. She chose it specifically because it was the kind of place Marcus would never enter. It lacked chrome and glass. Robert Shaw, Marcus's business partner, looked impatient. He was a man in his 60s, pragmatic, and visibly annoyed at being summoned downtown. "Eleanor, if this is a marital dispute," he began, checking his watch. She cut him off, sliding a single printed sheet across the worn wooden table. It was the most damning of the forged transfers. "This isn't a dispute, Robert. This is fraud." His eyes snapped to the paper. "He's been moving assets out of my name and, I suspect, out of your shared corporate funds, to buy his way into the Alastair family." Robert studied the paper. His skepticism evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating anger. He recognized the shell company name. "That impulsive, arrogant fool," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "He's risking my money. My client's money. For that woman." Eleanor didn't need to say another word. She had her ally. That night, she waited until the penthouse was still, the only sound the distant wail of a siren. She used a small brass spare key, a key Marcus had forgotten he'd even given her, meant for the cleaning staff, to unlock his office. The room smelled of his expensive cologne and leather. She didn't turn on the lights, using only the glow from her phone. She needed something physical, something symbolic. In his main desk drawer, beneath meticulous files, she found a stack of elegant, dark green envelopes. They were his personal stationery. Inside one, she found what she was looking for, a printed reservation for a penthouse apartment, not their own. And tucked behind it, a surveillance photo of her, drinking coffee at a cafe, taken from across the street. He wasn't just replacing her, he was monitoring her. The cold, professional cruelty of it, The violation chilled her to the bone. This was no longer a marriage. It was a war. She took one of the blank green envelopes. She returned to her study and printed a fresh copy of the most damning bank transfer, the one Robert had confirmed was fraudulent. She folded it crisply, slid it into the heavy green envelope, and placed it in the small emerald clutch she planned to carry at the gala. That was the moment everything changed. Eleanor has the proof, she has the ally, and she is no longer the victim. She is the strategist. If you are still watching and you value this incredible turning point in the story, please let us know you're here by simply commenting with the number 8 below. This is the very essence of Black brilliance, celebrating the intelligence and resilience that the world so often underestimates. If you believe in these stories, and you haven't yet, I truly recommend you subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the powerful conclusion. Your support helps us continue to create this content that informs and inspires. Now, let's continue. It's time to go to the gala. The night of the Thorne Foundation Christmas Gala arrived, draped in fake snow and glittering lights, but Eleanor felt a steely calm. This wasn't a party, it was a battlefield. She had seen Robert Shaw near the stage, sipping whiskey. He had looked at her, his expression unchanged, but gave a discreet, almost imperceptible nod. The alliance was set. She wore a stunning, simple emerald silk gown, the color chosen deliberately. It matched the small clutch in her hand. Marcus, however, was in his element. Intoxicated by his own power and the fawning attention, he walked with her on his arm, a prop for his performance. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" he boasted to a reporter, treating her like a prized racehorse. Beatrice, triumphant in a heavy diamond necklace, held court at the head table. She had deliberately placed Catherine Alistair, the mistress, dressed in defiant red, directly opposite Eleanor. The slight was obvious, cruel, and meant to be public. Catherine looked at Eleanor with a smirk of undisguised pity and victory. Eleanor merely smiled politely, offering no reaction. Her calm, however, seemed to infuriate Marcus. He wanted a scene. He wanted tears. He leaned in, his voice low but sharp. "You're awfully quiet. Tired from all the shopping." He still believed she was simple, oblivious, and, most importantly, defeated. He was wrong. The dinner finished, and Marcus took the stage for his speech. The classic jazz band, which had been playing Frank Sinatra Christmas tunes, went silent. A spotlight found him. He spoke of new beginnings, of bold futures, and the necessity of shedding old skins. As he finished, his eyes locked onto Eleanor, a cold, triumphant gaze that silenced the room. "And sometimes," Marcus said, his voice laced with the false regret of a predator, "we must part ways with those who no longer fit the vision." The room went silent, sensing the drama. He stepped off the stage, walked directly to the head table, and looked down at Eleanor, his face a mask of victory. "Eleanor," he began, savoring the moment. The silence stretched, thick and hungry, as every eye in the ballroom fixed on Eleanor. This was the moment he had planned, her public execution. Marcus's smirk was wide, triumphant. He was waiting for her to break, to cry, to flee in humiliation as Beatrice and Catherine watched with victorious eyes. "Eleanor," he repeated, his voice booming with false authority, "pack your bags. You're leaving tonight. You came with nothing, you'll leave with nothing." A collective gasp went through the room. Photographers, sensing blood, began raising their cameras. But Eleanor didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She didn't even look angry. Instead, she calmly reached into her emerald clutch and pulled out the sleek, dark green envelope. "Funny," she said, her voice quiet but amplified by the hot microphone still active on the table. "I was going to give you this after dinner." She paused, looking directly at him. "But perhaps now is better." She slid the envelope across the table. Confused and annoyed, Marcus snatched it. He opened the flap, his smirk fading as he pulled out the single sheet of paper. He saw the bank transfer. He saw the shell company name. He saw the forged signature. Before Marcus could react, Robert Shaw stood up from his table. "He's right about new beginnings," Robert announced, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "But that's because Mr. Thorne has been committing fraud against his partners, using corporate funds to secure private interests. As if on cue, the main projection screen behind the stage flickered. The Thorne Foundation logo disappeared, replaced by high-resolution scans of the forged signatures, one after another, followed by the penthouse reservation. At the back of the ballroom, two uniformed NYPD officers, alerted by Eleanor's lawyer an hour prior, began walking calmly toward the main table. Marcus looked from the screen to Robert, to the approaching officers, and finally to Eleanor. The man who thought he controlled everything realizes the woman he dismissed as simple has just destroyed him. The flashbulbs, which Marcus had craved all night, finally found their moment, capturing not his triumph, but the precise instant his empire crumbled. The officers were quiet, professional. They spoke quietly to Marcus, showing him a warrant. He didn't speak. He didn't resist. He was escorted out, not with a fight, but with the stunned, empty silence of a man whose script had been stolen, his power evaporating under the harsh glare of the ballroom lights. The cameras followed him all the way out. Catherine Alastair and her family, seeing their names implicated on the screen, slipped out a side door, their merger dead. Beatrice Thorne was left alone at the head table, her face a mask of disbelief and horror, finally, utterly speechless. Robert Shaw approached Eleanor through the chaos of whispers. He gave a simple, respectful nod. "The board will be grateful, Ms. Vance." The power transfer was complete. Eleanor walked out of the gala, not in shame, but in total control, ignoring the whispers and the stares that now held a new kind of respect. Days later, Eleanor returned to the penthouse one last time. It was silent, the staff dismissed. She walked into the master closet, past his rows of expensive, identical suits, and picked up her own suitcase. She packed her things calmly, methodically. As she walked to the door, she paused, looks back at the opulent prison she was meant to die in, and smiles. He told her to pack her bags, and she did. But she wasn't leaving with nothing. She was leaving with everything. In the end, it was the woman they dismissed who held all the proof, turning a public humiliation into ultimate justice. It's a powerful reminder that when we judge others by their appearance, background, or color, we often fail to see their true brilliance. As we saw with Eleanor, the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. What did Eleanor's quiet victory mean to you? We invite you to share your thoughts in the community below. And if you value stories that uplift and inspire, consider subscribing to Black Brilliance, where we celebrate the strength that is too often overlooked.